Welcome to Fantasy Blitz. No BS, just Blitz. I am Nick, half of the Fantasy Blitz team, and I got to talk to you about Joe Burrow and what it means for the rest of your fantasy football season. A lot happened, guys, so we got to get into it. Here we go on Fantasy Blitz. Boom. Our boy, Joe Burrow, has been kind of a stud all year, right? Well, no. He's been kind of a stud since he really got over his injury after week 4. Week 5 with Arizona, it was really a return to form for JB, throwing for an insane 28.6 points. And from there, it was just kind of like back to good old times Joe Burrow, right? Putting up 17 points, 30 points against San Francisco. And just overall, all the Joe Burrow owners were having a great time. All of that, though, came to a crashing halt this week when Joe Burrow injured his wrist. How and when, we don't know. More on that later. He injured his wrist and he is out for the season. What does that mean for your fantasy team? Well, let's get into the details of the injury. What happened? Joe tore a ligament in his wrist. There's a lot of ligaments in your wrist, and they take a long time to heal. So it's looking like a 6 to 12 week recovery time for Joe. For all intents and purposes, he's out for the season. I think he's projected as like a late January possible restart, but they're not going to do that. They're going to sit Joe for the rest of the year. So what does that mean for your fantasy team? Well, first and foremost, it was all sorts of cope amongst the Bengals fans, even though it was tweeted out from the official Bengals Twitter account, X account. Barry said, "I'm not believing this until the Bengals official account confirms it." And it was just terrible, terrible times up in Ohio. Again, right when we thought when we were back, the Bengals that we've kind of come to know ever since Joe Burrow showed up, competitive, get to the playoffs, blow it in the playoffs. Now it's just kind of back to, oh man, this is just going to be sad again. The Bengals are going to be the Bengals of the NFL again. No one's really into that. So I'm really sorry for all the people in Ohio. But I'm also especially sorry, because this is Fantasy Blitz, for the fantasy players out there who drafted Joe early, because the situation now is not good. And folks like Dave Portnoy have paid the piper. They were very angry about it. Many people who were sports betting, but especially Dave Portnoy, who lost $120,000. And he blames the NFL. He blames the Bengals for some shenanigans because Joe was not on the injury report. He was not listed as questionable. He was not listed as doubtful or anything. He was listed as healthy before the game, even though he showed up for the game in a type of brace for his hand. There was like some secret peep shots of that when he was getting off the plane. Something was like covering up the other part of his wrist. So some people want justice. The NFL thinks it's actually valid what he's going through right now. So they're actually launching an investigation into the Bengals and their reporting for the injury, because they're like, hey, if you knew he was injured, you should have put it on the injury report. So all that doesn't really matter to fantasy, but it is an interesting side note, and it's just how important Joe Burrow is to the league. But before we get into the fantasy results, go ahead and like and subscribe to Fantasy Blitz. I appreciate it. It's the best way to support the channel. The long and short of it is all the wide receivers are going to suffer in a big way. You don't got Joe Burrow throwing anymore. So everyone, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, even my guy Trenton Irwin, who else? Tyler Boyd. Well, you've got Jake Browning throwing to him now. Love Jake. He's got confidence, but probably not going to be balling out the way Joe does. So all your wide receivers are going to take they're all going to get nerfed by about 15 to 25% in my estimation. On the other hand, though, tight end Irv Smith, who is the only catching tight end there in the building in Cincinnati, is probably going to see a boost, probably 5% boost. He's the only catching tight end there in Cincinnati. But last year when he was used more, he did put up some decent numbers, definitely not like in the top 5 or anything like that. But tight end Irv Smith is probably going to get a boost. The biggest boost is going to be, though, Joe Mixon. They're going to be passing the rock to Joe considerably more. A lot more backfield passes to Joe. Joe had already kind of been, they had reestablished Joe in the run game again. So that was a positive for all the Joe Mixon owners out there. But I continue to see him being utilized heavily over the next 3 weeks. That's the only thing that matters for us fantasy players. Daily fantasy, Joe Mixon will probably be a play because they're going to continue to at least try and do a playoff run or at least a division run. A sneaky play here is the Jacksonville defense next week. They're probably going to eat pretty good all the Jake Browning interceptions. So that's kind of a sneaky streaming if you've got Jacksonville on your bench and you normally wouldn't play him against the Bengals because of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Well, this is more of a solid start for the Jacksonville defense, which has been looking stronger, strength over strength. So that's all for Fantasy Blitz. It was a quick one. I wanted to give you the low on what's going down in Cincinnati, what that means for your fantasy team. Go ahead and smash that like button. I'm going to do some more of these quick recaps in the future. So if you want me to cover something specific, go ahead and comment below. Again, I'm Nick with Fantasy Blitz. No BS, just Blitz.